What's up, team? My name is Jordan Berry, and you're listening to the Kaizen Fitness Show. What's up, team? Welcome to another episode of the Kaizen Fitness Show. And on today's show, we have a special guest. She has represented New Zealand overseas, picking up 4 gold medals at the Oceania Judo Champs, and she is also the current under 57 kg women's national champion. So welcome to the show, Qona Christie.
Hi Jordan, thanks for having me.
No worries at all, Qona, an absolute pleasure. Now, we've known each other for a couple of years now through myself, dabbling in a little bit of judo, doing a bit of gym training together. But for all of those who don't know about you, let's kind of start off by first explaining what initially got you into judo and why you've kind of stuck with it.
So I started judo when I was 7 because my mum's family friend, or our family friend's grandma, was a black belt. So she encouraged my mum to take me along to judo because I was a very hyperactive kid. I loved sport. Anything active was my department. So she encouraged my mum to take me along to judo. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since.
Cool. Was that when you were 7 when you first started out?
Yeah, 7 years old. So I've been doing it for a long time.
Cool. So as a young whippersnapper, when you first started doing judo, how did you kind of initially find it? Obviously, being a contact sport, a grappling sport. As a 7-year-old, how did you find that?
It was a bit different because number one, it's not a team sport. I was used to football and other sports like that. So it was an individual sport, but you do have heaps of training partners and heaps of people at judo. So I initially started going kind of for the social factor. Mum liked me to interact with other kids, and Mum also loved me trying to get me coordinated because I was a little bit unco. So she thought that it would, teach me to be more in touch with my body. And yeah, waste my energy. So I was a little bit more chill.
Yeah, a bit more chilled out. That's interesting. So you were playing football at the same time you started judo?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you had football going, you had judo going. Was there a clear distinction where you're like, I want to focus everything on judo as opposed to the team sports?
So I did continue playing football for a while up until the end of high school, but I also continued doing judo. Judo is definitely more of a main focus. And football was just kind of, that became more of the social, and judo became more of, my time to focus and train because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. So let's break that down a little bit more. Obviously, football and judo are 2 completely different sports. One's obviously a team sport, one's individual. Why do you think judo has just kind of clicked with you a little bit more? What is it about the sport that you like so much?
I think the thing I like most is there's always something to learn and always something to perfect. And you're yeah, that's the same with all sports, but judo just has so many different aspects to it. You see someone throw someone, but you don't even know the different steps that goes into it to make that actually happen. So I guess, yeah, just the fact that judo you can learn something new every day, and then even if you practice it a lot, it's still really hard. So I guess, there was something always to focus on and to learn, and I guess that kept me going because I was I want to learn more, I want to perfect more and more and more.
Yeah, so true. I think the quite cool thing about judo is that when you're a white and yellow belt, when you're first starting out, you learn throws like taitoshi and ippon seoi-nage, and what you kind of soon realize when you're watching competitions, black belts use the throws that you get taught at a really young age. So it's not it's kind of hard to explain, but it's not like one of these sports where you have to learn for 5-10 years before you can do these kind of cool throws and stuff. Literally, black belts are using throws that are kind of taught at a really young age. You obviously develop them as you go, but it's quite cool that it's kind of staggered in that regard.
Yeah, for sure.
You're probably finding with your own judo, you're probably doing techniques that you've been doing all the way since the start of your kind of judo career, right?
Yeah, I do the exact same throw. I still haven't mastered it.
That's the thing, Like, yeah, it's just something that you keep working on.
Yeah.
So going back to kind of when you were 7 years old, you just started judo. Can you tell me a little bit more about your first competition? Because competitions are like a real scary time for like a 7-year-old or 8 or however old you were when you first did your competition. How did you kind of deal with that mentally? Because there's obviously quite a bit of stress in that kind of environment.
Yeah, first competition's always nerve-wracking. Like, we even get kids nowadays, they're like going into their first competition. I was like, I remember how I felt my first competition. Pretty sure I cried, definitely. I was the crier, unfortunately. But yeah, I was super nervous as always. I'm still very nervous in competitions, but I'm going to first competition. You don't really know what to expect. Like, it is like training, but it's not like training in some aspects. So I guess I was just quite nervous, and everyone was reassuring me that it would be fine. And it was fine. It was great. I loved it, and still doing it.
Still doing it, you're still here. So that first competition, do you think that was a bit of a defining moment for you at that age where you're like, because obviously training's all well and good, but when you actually compete, that kind of makes or breaks people, right? If people compete, they're like, shit, this is so tough. I just got smashed or whatever, or I did really well, I won. Was that like a defining moment for you where you're like, cool, this is really like a sport I want to focus on?
Yeah, for sure. So my first match, I was so nervous, and I went out of there and I just did like, pretty much I only knew one throw or two throws at the time. I just did my one throw and I won in like 3 seconds. So I was like, whoa, what I've been learning in training is like, I just did it in competition. So, and you get like a real rush as well. So yeah, for sure, that was a good point for sure.
Cool. So you won your first competition.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then from that point onwards, because where was that? Did you fight in Australia first or New Zealand?
New Zealand. It was just a local one for Wellington, to push the newbies in. But yeah, I still fight in those little competitions even today.
Yeah, I reckon that's so cool. That's so cool too. So you did your first local competition as a youngster. At what point did you kind of get through that next barrier where you're starting to win regional competitions? How far into your judo were you then?
So my first, I think North Islands was my first, bigger competition. And I think you had to be, I want to say yellow belt or maybe orange belt to compete. So I think that might have taken me 2 or 3 years to get. So it would have been a little further down the track. And that was, for me, a huge step up from our little Wellington competitions. Yeah. And again, so nervous. And there was this girl from France there, and I was, freaking out. And I managed to get a bronze, and I was so happy because the medal was probably 3 times as big as the little Wellington one. And I was like, oh my God, after I got that, I was like, this is so cool. I want to do more of these bigger ones. It sounds bad to say because of the medal, but that was a big motivator because I was like, wow, it's so big. Me as a little, 10-year-old. Yeah.
Perfect. And obviously we'll talk a little bit further in this podcast about kind of where you're at now as far as your judo, but you won your local competition, you got a bronze at the North Islands. At this point, you're kind of 2 or 3 years into your judo. Are you kind of thinking, how far ahead are you thinking? At this stage, were you thinking, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics, I want to represent New Zealand? What was kind of going through your mind?
Ever since I was little, I've wanted to go to the Olympics. I've got, so with every competition you go to, you get a little accreditation, little pass thing. I've got one from, I want to say primary school, Newtown school. I've got a little accreditation thing that I've drawn. So it's my name, my Olympic number, a little picture of me and what sport I was going for. So judo. I think it was maybe 2008, 9. So I would have been 8 or 9 that I drew that. So Olympics for sure was the overall goal. But I think as I was actually doing it, I was just focused on just the moment and enjoying it. And yeah, just going through the small competitions, doing the best I could. But yeah, kind of deep down, I've always wanted to go to the Olympics.
Well, I didn't actually know that about that story about Newtown School and how you'd written this out. I think that's...
Can I go get it?
If you've got it with you, yeah, go get it. Go grab it.
Oh, it was 2008. So this is my little Olympic card. If you can see, it says my name, age 9, my date of birth, my seat number, my sport. I'm going for Judo and representing New Zealand, and I signed it as well.
Yeah, hold up to the camera, Qona. It's so cool.
And then on the back it says "Go for gold."
Yeah.
With the Kiwi as well. I love that you've kept that as well.
I know. I think Mum found it when we moved, so put that one in the
Memory box.
In the memory box. You know what this reminds me of, Qona? I was reading Richie McCaw's autobiography probably 3 or 4 years ago now, but this really resonates with something he did. I think he was having lunch with his parents, or he was at a diner. I can't remember the exact situation, but they were kind of talking about his rugby career, and he was at a young age as well. And he wrote on a napkin GAB, which stood for Great All Black. He didn't just want to be an All Black, he wanted to be a Great All Black. And he wrote that down at a similar age, probably 8 or 9. I can't remember the exact details, but very similar. He wrote it down on this napkin, just the words kind of or the letters GAB, meaning Great All Black. And he just kind of dedicated his life to that. And we obviously all know Richie McCaw now as being probably the greatest All Black that's ever lived. So it's that little thing he did, very similar exactly to what you did there. And yeah, it's such a cool story, and it's really cool to see that he had that kind of installed in him from such an early age, like yourself. And then he's kind of continued with that too.
That is cool.
Yeah, super cool. So tell me a little bit more about why you wanted to go to the Olympics, because obviously every kid kind of has their dream of being a policeman or a fireman or firewoman or whatever. Why did you want to go to the Olympics? Do you know why?
I don't know, like I said, I've always been into sport, so like that's kind of like all I've wanted to do is, do sport all my life, and I feel like the pinnacle of that is the Olympics, You train all your life for it, so I guess that's kind of why that was my goal, because I love sport and I wanted to be involved in it for as long as possible, even after the Olympics. But at the time, Olympics was like, the thing, which still is the thing. Yeah.
Awesome, Qona. That's really cool. Now let's segue more into judo, the sport itself. Now what a lot of people don't realise, probably in New Zealand, is that judo is like huge internationally. Obviously in countries like Japan, obviously because judo is from Japan, but France, a lot of countries through Europe and the Middle East, judo is like the number 1 sport, or the number 1 or 2 or 3 sport in the country. But in New Zealand, it's definitely a minority sport, and obviously a lot of funding goes towards rugby, bigger team sports. And individual sports like judo probably do get a little bit less attention. So, being a New Zealand representative, what kind of support and funding do you get from judo?
So being a judo representative internationally for New Zealand means I do get no funding. So pretty much everyone in New Zealand who does judo, who is competing internationally, has paid their own way there. I've personally paid for many a times I've gone overseas through my own money, and also fundraising. I've done a lot of fundraising, like sausage sizzles, movie nights, raffles and everything. But yeah, unfortunately, judo is a sport with no funding. It is really small in New Zealand, so we do get semi-forgot about. Yeah.
I think, that kind of makes your journey a little bit harder, because if you're going up against international judo representatives from other countries, they may have top coaching, top funding, all the top sports equipment and gear. Whereas in New Zealand, because judo is more of a minority sport, you're literally having to pay your own way. And a lot of coaches are kind of having to work for free and stuff to kind of install the skills that you need to compete against that. How do you kind of find that? What's kind of the biggest challenge you've found throughout your judo journey, in particular traveling overseas and representing New Zealand? What's been the biggest challenge to get there?
there's been a lot of challenges. Funding and costs and everything being like one of the main ones. I have to work, well, I do work, don't have to, I work full time at my day job, and I make money, and then in the evening I do judo, and pretty much all the money I make goes towards traveling for judo because I love it so much. Like, so many people have been like, why do you do it? Like, you're wasting your money. But like, judo's taken me all over the world. I love it so much. I've made amazing friends through it. And despite not having funding, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I mean, funding would be great, but I will continue to, put my own money into it because it's the best. I love it so much.
Yeah, that's so great, Qona. I think just what you said kind of sums up, one, yourself as a person, but also the fact that you're doing this for the right reason. You could have picked a really glamorous sport that's got heaps of funding, heaps of money, heaps of media attention, but you've chosen the sport that you love, and even despite the hardships you're going to have to go through and have gone through to get to the point to where you are, like, you're still prepared. And I know you work long hours. Like, when you're not at judo, you're working. So I know that you do spend a lot of time, earning money for yourself to fund these overseas trips and things, which is super cool. That you've got the drive not on the mat, but you realize that you have to do a lot of hard work outside of that in order to make your dream a reality as well. Yeah. So I think that's really cool. On that kind of note as well, with judo being a minority sport, and female players also being a minority within that minority sport, how have you found your own kind of personal development with finding other girls obviously in your own weight category as well? How have you found your own development as a judo athlete if there is kind of less, really good competition that you can challenge yourself against?
Yeah, so that's also coming under like one of the challenges. There are not many people who do judo in New Zealand, and even less females. So I have been training at the same club for 13 years, and I fight mainly just the boys. The boys are good size until they get too strong. But just fighting the boys has helped me develop heaps. And training overseas is kind of hard, again, because the money situation, and it's quite a big challenge, but training overseas is probably like the best way to improve your judo. Again, coming at a big cost because you have to live in a different country, food, training, insurance, everything. So training, I've done a whole lot of different like stints overseas, like in like small time frames, and then coming back and kind of like working on it in the club at home. So I guess the mix between both of them is really helpful because you go over there, get some hard training, you work your ass off, and then you come back here and you do all your work on. So it kind of shows you what level you're at, and then you come back here and train to fix your mistakes and improve.
In all the places you've travelled overseas, which judo club or which judo players work the hardest?
Oh, Japanese for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So I've been to Japan twice, and the first time we trained at a university, and then we did 2 trainings at the high school, and the trainings are 3 hours long. Like, these girls do not stop. And I was like, oh, maybe the high school will be a little bit easier, We started off with like 300 push-ups, and they counted every single one. And then we did rope climbs, and then the 3-hour session started. So definitely the Japanese train the hardest. That's why they're the best. And that's somewhere I'd love to go back and train at. To
do 300 press-ups and rope climbs before 3 hours of judo?
Yeah.
During that 3-hour judo period, how much randori are you doing? And for those of you watching and listening who don't know what randori is, it's basically just 80% effort fighting.
Randori is, I can't give you exacts, but a lot. Like, probably they like to do a lot of rounds. So I want to say like maybe 10 or 12 4-minute rounds.
Yeah.
And there was this one girl at the high school who later on I figured out that she was in like the junior or cadet national team. But she would keep fighting you until she got the one throw she wanted. Like, she would do nothing but this one technique, and she'd keep going until she got it. So, you know, you'd be at the end of the round, 4 minutes, you'd be shattered. You'd be like, cool, gonna go take a break or fight someone a little bit easier. And she'll be like, again? And you're like, okay, again, let's go. So, yeah, I like seeing their work ethic. It's crazy. They're insane.
Okay, so the Japanese, well, I guess that's really cool because obviously judo originated in Japan, so it's really cool that they're taking it so seriously as well. As an individual fighter, when you go to these places, do you feel inspired and do you feel lifted up to kind of get to their level of intensity?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's difficult, don't get me wrong, compared with coming from New Zealand where, you know, we train at our club, we train maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week. They train twice a day, every day, pretty much, even from like a high school level. So you go there and you kind of get smashed and you're like, all right, Qona, you can do this. Like, these people have been doing it for ages. But then when you do come up against someone and you do really good, it's like, yes, like this person's been doing it for so long and I'm doing really well against them. It's really like motivating, definitely.
And how have you found Japanese competitors? I'm guessing you've probably faced a few in your international competitions.
Yeah, look, they're really good. That's all I have to say. Their international, their top senior players are all dominating the world. And so do their juniors and their cadets and their 5-year-olds. Like, they're just like a different breed when it comes to judo. So yeah, haven't done too well in competitions against the Japanese.
Interesting though, but I guess it's good going there and immersing yourself in their culture and their training regime to kind of get an insight into the kind of training that they're doing and how they might prepare for competitions. Yeah, look, it sounds like Qona, obviously you've gone through a hell of a lot to get to where you are. You've been overseas, you've won, you know, your golds at the Oceania Judo Champs as well. And despite all the challenges to get there, to do all the travel, what's going to be, just give me, say, 2 of, you know, the highlights of your judo career up to this point.
There's so many highlights, firstly. I'd say, like, my top one was from the Oceania Champs in New Caledonia, where I was fighting 57 kgs, junior and senior. Because I was in the junior division, juniors under 21 years old, I was mainly focused on that. I think I was like 18, 19. And the seniors was just like, I'm happy I got selected and I'm just going to try my best. But I ended up winning both, like totally not expected to win seniors. And I was over the moon, like highlight for sure. I did super good in that competition. And that's when I was like, whoa, like, got to step it up. Like, this is a big kind of point in my judo. So I'm really proud of that moment.
Cool. And moment number 2?
Moment number 2. I would say probably like some of the Asian tours I did the past 2 years. Again, like going into international competition, like you kind of have your personal expectation of how you want to do, and I did that. I medaled in both years I did it. I got medals, so I'm really happy about that, because Asian judo versus Oceania judo is a bit different. So yeah, just happy about those international medals.
Yes, there's been those international pinnacles, I guess, which is kind of in the direction you want to be heading in with your Olympic dream as well.
I feel more
tell me a little bit more
pressure fighting
because obviously
locally,
you've done like hundreds of national competitions
that, you know,
and you've been national champion
fighting in
quite
New
a few
Zealand,
times,
like
so
she must do well.
Tell me
so
the difference between competing in New
pressure's
Zealand
on, like I have to do
compared to
really
competing
Whereas
overseas and
internationally,
representing New
you know,
Zealand.
we're
How
coming
do
from
those
a
competitions
country
differ
where
for you
judo is
mentally?
quite small. Coming into this competition with huge like names, like country names, like France, whose number one sport is judo, Japan. I guess there's less expectation from others, like my peers, my friends, people watching, but more I also have that my expectations, like I don't just want to roll over in the first 5 seconds. I want to put up a fight and I want to win. So I guess mentally it's, and I say more relaxing internationally, but higher atmosphere. Like there's like, it's an international competition, number one. There's a big arena. There's heaps of countries there. It's very professional compared with New Zealand, but I'm just like little Qona there, and I'm just gonna go do my best. And I've paid my way here, so I'm gonna leave everything out on the mat. And try my best, go hard.
Yeah, that's such a powerful mindset, Qona. Being the underdog, you're kind of like, I'm here, I've paid my way here, but I guess New Zealand isn't seen as a big judo nation, so you don't have the expectation, I guess, to do well, but you obviously really want to, and it's important that you do. So you're kind of like the underdog in this kind of situation, which means that you're kind of going on the mat with that nothing to lose attitude, like I'm here and I'm just going to give it my best shot.
Yeah.
It's quite funny because I've seen you competing nationally, obviously, and you seem super relaxed before you fight, but I don't know, just mentally, what's kind of your routine kind of on a national level? Like what's kind of going through your mind before you step on the mat? Do you have like a real clear focus, or are you focusing on relaxing? What's kind of the process?
It kind of depends on who I'm about to fight. I like to know like a little bit about them, but not too much, or else I freak myself out. So I kind of just really focus on my breathing, because I panic, and that makes me tired, makes my my mouth dry, and I don't want to be exhausted before I even go into the fight. So I like to focus on my breathing, focus on the fight, not before it, not after it, just like I don't know, in the moment, kind of. And I like to focus on what I'm going to do first. As soon as the referee says, Hajime, what I'm going to try do. So, it's a whole combined of everything.
So that mental focus and having a bit of a game plan, that you know a little bit about your competitor, like they may have a strong left-handed taitoshi or whatever it may be, so you're like, okay, I'm not going to walk onto them in that setting. Yeah, okay, cool. So with that in mind, going back to internationally, do you feel a sense of pride when you're wearing the silver fern, and when you have been on international podiums and you're representing your country? Is there a sense of pride there as well?
Oh, for sure. Like representing New Zealand internationally is huge. Like, even saying that, I'm so proud of, everything I've done to say that I've represented New Zealand. And I think fighting for your country internationally, like you just got to do your best and kind of like put New Zealand on the map. Like in terms of judo, like you just got to go for it, because we're not even on the map at the moment. We're like a little dot in the corner. So any kind of like exposure, we like attending a competition in Europe, people will be like, New Zealand? Like what, how are they here? And just having that presence and showing people that, New Zealand does have judo, and we're here to, improve and work on it and hopefully up our game a little bit.
Yep. That's so cool. I love what you just said there. Put New Zealand on the mat, and like really just leave everything out there and just go for it, because as you're saying, we're kind of this underdog nation when it comes to the sport of judo. And, our reputation as a judo nation is purely based on basically what the likes of you and a select few others in New Zealand are doing overseas, So I guess there is a bit of that pressure, but at the same time, it's more just, I'm extremely proud to be here. I'm going to do the best for my country. I'm going to do the best that I can for myself. And I know that all the training that I've done leading up to this point is going to put me in the best possible position to do well. Yeah, that's really cool. So you've obviously had some great successes internationally. Talk a little bit about a couple of times where you've been really disappointed with yourself overseas. Has there been any fights that just haven't clicked or worked for you?
For sure. So I think it was about 3 years ago we were training out of Hungary, and Europe, everything's close. So we went to competitions all around Europe, which were junior European Cups. And I was really super excited for my first, one. Just get out there. I had a competitor who wasn't like too hard or they weren't going to be pushover easy, but she wasn't going to be like, have no chance. It was like a good competition for me. And I went out and just kind of panicked. I wasn't quick, I wasn't sharp, I was a bit in my head. And I came off and I was like, what, like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing? I was so disappointed in myself. And pretty much at these competitions, if you lose your first fight, you're out. Like, that's it. You've gone all that way. Luckily, I didn't go all the way from New Zealand to Europe because I was already in Europe. But, like, you've gone all that way and you're just like, it's hard. Especially, even in other competitions, like, you've pretty much, if I came from New Zealand to, say, Germany to that European Cup, I paid all my money to go there to fight and I just bomb out in the first round. That sucks. Like, that is the worst feeling. And that's the kind of, feeling you don't want to feel. So you try harder, train harder. So when you do go overseas, you are kind of getting your money's worth in a sense, even though that's bad to think of. But yeah, that moment was like, when you kind of doubt yourself, I guess. That was rough.
That's huge, and you raise a good point there because, judo can be so brutal like that. You can have one fight, and if you don't win that could be your day over.
Yeah.
And in this case, that could be a competition over, and you've just flown across the other side of the world, spent however many thousands of dollars to be there, and if something just doesn't click on the day, you only get one shot, and some of those circumstances. So that's very true. Okay, so when in circumstances like that where you've invested so much time, so much training, so much money, you go overseas and it doesn't go so well for you, like in that situation you just said, was there any doubt in your mind whether you should continue doing judo? Has there ever been any doubt, that you still want to continue to progress towards the dream of being an Olympian?
Yeah. I think for sure there's always that doubt sometimes. Like, for me, training can either be like, there's actually three. It can either be like the best, you're like, whoa, like, why was that so good? Like, feels so good after training. There's the kind of meh training, like, you did all right, worked up a sweat, did some good fighting. And then there's some trainings where you just feel like so destroyed, like nothing has gone right, like, why can't I do this? What is wrong? Like, sometimes after those like really rough trainings, you're like this is difficult. Like, why am I doing this? Like, some days it just feels like nothing's working, but then you go to training the next day and it's always a little bit better. So I guess there is doubt for a little bit just after it, but then once you get back into it, it fires off again. It's always up and down in sport. I think you have your good days and your bad days.
I think it's definitely mental too, isn't it? If you step on the mat with the right intentions and the right headspace, even if you're physically a little bit sore, like, you just completely forget about that. But even if you're physically feeling fine, but mentally you're not quite engaged, like, that will just destroy your ability to do your turn-ins, to be quick, to, be agile and loose.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, that's huge, Qona. That's huge. So, up to this point, you're the current New Zealand champion. At the time of filming this podcast, we're in lockdown. And judo being a contact sport, obviously, it could take longer to get back into it than other sports. What's kind of your next step in this road to getting you to the Olympics? What's your next step?
Yeah, like you said, a bit difficult in these times, especially because they've postponed the most recent Olympics, which is huge.
Yeah.
My aim from the start was pretty much the 2022 Commonwealth Games, and then the 2024 Olympics again. But with this whole thing, I'm not sure if it's going to change like the qualifying criteria, because if the Olympics are next year and then the Commonwealths are the year after, there's a whole lot of logistics that goes into being selected for these things. Firstly, you got to go to international competitions to get points, and it's like no one's traveling internationally, so I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen, but the aim is still Commonwealths and Olympics. Just got to see how it pans out, how the world is going by then.
Yeah, obviously, and that's unfortunately completely out of control at this stage. So in the months, well, I guess, we've got no idea when your next international competition could be. So what do you plan on doing between now and that international competition to ensure that you are in the best possible position come time to get back on the international stage?
Just training, really, doing as much as I can with the things I have. I've been training at home. I've got my boyfriend suited up in a judo gi. He's a little bit scared. I threw him once and he was like, no, we can't do that. So I've just been doing lots of turn-ins on him, going for runs, working with you to help me get fit and not lazy in this time. So I guess, that's all I can do before the next competition. Who knows when that will be, but just staying hopefully at the top of my game.
Yep, staying sharp, I think that's key. Not waiting until you get back into structured training, because by that point you may have had 4 to 5 months off where every one of your competitors have been training, so you've got to treat this as a period where I guess training isn't going to be as structured as normal, but chances are your competitors are making the most of this time as well. So I guess it's a matter of making sure your game's on track as well. Just a couple of questions to kind of wrap things up, Qona. Like, I think it's hugely inspiring that you've done all of this basically off your own back. Like, you've had to fundraise the money, and I've seen the fundraisers you do and the work you put in to ensure that you can travel internationally and support yourself. And, kind of that whole being in a minority sport, but still just giving it everything you've got. I think that's super inspiring, particularly, to female athletes who may be in minority sports, and as female athletes, they may be a minority numbers-wise, so we'll have kind of less competitors to try themselves against. So what's kind of your advice? If you have like a 7 or 8 year old Qona right now, and she's just starting to get into judo, like, what would you tell her? What would be kind of your words of wisdom?
I guess my message would be like, it's not, especially for judo, it's not about the size of the sport, and it's definitely not about the funding. It's literally for your love of the sport. Like, if you have passion for the sport you do, and if there's passion there, like, you don't really need anything else. I feel like you'll be quite satisfied. And if you have passion for the sport, like, your hard work will be rewarding, and it will pay off, I think. And I feel like if you're doing something you love, like, nothing really can hold you back. It's what you love, so it's easy to do.
Yeah, 100%. So if those young athletes coming through, your advice would just be just to keep going with it, just persevere. Yeah,
for sure. If they love it, I don't think there's any reason to stop. Yeah. I think that's a really key fundamental thing. When you talk to anyone that's achieved any kind of success, it's very much they're passionate about it. They're not afraid to go through a bit of hardship. They're not afraid to do a bit of work both in the dojo and outside of the dojo in order to fulfill this dream. So I've got to commend you, Qona, on your work ethic, both on and off the mat, honestly. Like, not only having to do the work on the mat, but having to fundraise to raise that money to go overseas. And, from that young age where you wrote on your card that you wanted to be an Olympian, at the age of 7, 8, 9 years old to now you're 21, and you're still doing it and you're still very much focused. I reckon that's so admirable that you've been able to stay focused on one goal for such a long period of time. Because you look at most people are like, oh, okay, well, I want to achieve this, and then 2 weeks later they're doing something else, So to be working towards the goal for such a long period of time, I think that's really cool. If you were to do anything different, would you do anything different to get you to this point? Probably just train a little bit more. You can always train more. That's it. Apart from that, nothing. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, just that inner work ethic. Now, well done, Qona. And just before we go, where can people go to follow your judo journey? If they want to support you, if they want to watch what you're doing, where can they go?
I want to say my Facebook. I don't know, sometimes I post things on there, which is Qona.Christie. Instagram, Qona.C. Pretty much no one has my name, so if you'd search me up, you'll probably find me and what I'm doing, and if you're interested, have a look. Cool.
So Qona.C on Instagram or Qona.Christie on Facebook.
Yeah.
Awesome, Qona. And yeah, you are quite active on Instagram and stuff, and it's really cool to see the different kind of training you're doing. So yeah, make sure everyone you check out Qona on Facebook and Instagram. Show her some love. So I think she's doing really good things, and she's putting New Zealand on the map for judo, so it's really cool to see. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Qona, and yeah, very much appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Perfect, Qona. Thank you. And for all of you that are watching, if you want to see any more Kaizen Fitness content, check out our website, www.kaizenfitness.co.nz, or you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram underneath the handle @Kaizen Fitness NZ. What an inspirational podcast. If that doesn't get you raring to go towards your goals and to achieve some great things, then I don't know what will. So make sure you guys go out there and take some action.
Thank you so much for listening. Now, it's time for you to take action.